Welcome to today's Textile Talk. I'm Lucy Shaken. I'm SAQA's Communications Coordinator and your Textile Talks organizer. Textile Talks are presented by the International Quilt Museum, Quilt Alliance, Studio Art Quilt Associates, or SAQA, and Surface Design Association. We love bringing you these free programs every week, thanks to the support of our sponsors and contributions from viewers like you. If you enjoy Textile Talks, please consider making a donation at saqa.com/ttsupport. A few Zoom notes before we begin. This is a webinar, so we can't see or hear you, but we can read your comments in the chat. If you have any questions during today's program, please type them into the Q&A function, and we will have some time at the end of the program to answer them. If you have suggestions for ways we can improve or for topics you'd like to see in future Textile Talks, please let us know in the post-event survey. We have closed captions turned on for this program. You can turn these on or off by finding the live caption or CC button in your settings. We're currently in contact with Zoom support staff about a bug with the caption display. So if you notice anything funky, please let us know in the survey and include what type of device you're using. Today's talk includes pre-recorded portions. I will be maximizing the volume output on my end, but you may want to grab a pair of headphones or be prepared to adjust your speaker volume. Today's topic is growing a grassroots collaborative art project, Reflections of Ourselves, presented and created by Tracey Lawko. Tracey is a textile artist whose work focuses on the environment and explores the concept of Canada. From large dimensional and mixed media sculptures to detailed nature studies that are drawn with thread, her work pushes the boundaries of the medium of embroidery and fiber art. Tracey's work has been exhibited in Canada, Europe, and the United States. It has been recognized with numerous awards, including an Ontario Arts Council Artist Presenter Collaboration Grant and the Robert G. Kemp Arts Award, both for Reflections of Ourselves. For those of you who are coming with us to our conference in Toronto in a few weeks, you'll have a chance to see this unique exhibition in person. For everyone else, we're so pleased to be able to share it with you virtually here today. Consider joining us for Art in Place, our virtual mini conference, July 14th and 15th. New members can use code TALKS, that's TALKS, for 25% off the first year of SAQA membership. So now I'm very pleased to share Reflections of Ourselves with you. This community art project is a celebration of Canada's diverse cultural heritage. It communicates a strong and inclusive message.
Thanks so much, Lucy. I can't tell you how excited I am to be here and talk to you about this very, very special project.
So we'll go ahead and play the recording now.
In 2018-2019, I had the idea of creating a large textile artwork that celebrates the rich cultural heritage of Canada. That idea transformed into an artwork called Reflections of Ourselves. My talk today is about my experience bringing this grassroots collaborative art project to fruition and the new to me role of producing a documentary video. I'll share a few photos with you as I walk through the process, and then we'll show the video. I look forward to your questions at the end. So how did it start? I remember hearing an increasing number of news reports about anti-immigrant sentiment, hate crimes, and the treatment of Indigenous peoples, all of which I found concerning. Over 37 million people live on Turtle Island within the boundaries of Canada. Some are recent arrivals and others trace ancestors who have been here for many generations. Indigenous peoples have been on this land since time immemorial. We are all Canadians and we each have stories and rich traditions. But what could I do? I'm an artist. Well, I thought I could create an artwork that celebrates our rich heritage. And that artwork could be a tree that includes all the cultural groups present in Canada. So here I am starting to create the tree. I realized I needed to define the scope of the project. Who was I looking for? As this is a Canadian story, participants must by definition be Canadian citizens or permanent residents of Canada. To me, the only way this artwork would be meaningful would be to have broad participation from across the country. It would need to represent our diversity in many forms, certainly by cultural heritage. And as a textile artist, I also wanted variety in textile techniques, materials, and artistry. I'm delighted that participants are also diverse in other ways, by age, economic means, social status, and more. This slide shows some of the first leaves to come in. Left to right, starting from the top, Swedish, Palestinian, Ghanaian, Irish Catholic, Japanese, Finnish, Ukrainian, Chinese, Manitoba Métis, Hawaiian, Ugandan, and Polynesian New Zealander. Early on, a contact put me in touch with an Anishinaabe friend who agreed to participate. Victoria's wonderful leaf of a red canoe on leather with beaded edging is at the top of this photo. Her leaf was the tangible encouragement I needed to know that this project was truly possible. A few other Indigenous leaves representing Tahltan, Wet'suwet'en, Gitxsan, Squamish cultural groups are also partly visible in this photo. I realized that having an Indigenous person involved as liaison and consultant was key to broadening Indigenous representation. Cleo Skavinsky, who is Dene from Hay River, Northwest Territories, provided valuable advice and assistance to engage Indigenous participation in the project. My early research led me to reference books such as the Encyclopedia of Canada's Peoples and Aboriginal Peoples of Canada, both published by the University of Toronto Press, and both of which focus on sociolinguistic groups. Focusing on sociolinguistic groups made sense to me, more so than shorter-term political definitions of country for a couple of reasons. People have come here over hundreds of years, and political boundaries have changed. Indeed, those changes often cause waves of migration. Also, there can be multiple cultural groups within a single present-day country. For example, how could there be only one leaf to represent all the cultural groups who have come from India? Hindi, Sikh, Tamil, Gujarati, Bengali, Goan, and so on. This slide is from the opening reception at Aurelia Museum of Art and History in May 2022. So how did I find participants? I reached out to many different organizations, quilt and embroidery guilds, craft councils, arts groups, community associations, and I also approached individual artists through direct contact, social media, and presentations. Also, I continue to ask just about everyone I come into contact with about their heritage. This slide shows some of the leaf artists at the opening in Aurelia in May 2022. Their cultural groups include Brazilian, Serbian, Belarusian, Assyrian, and Trinidadian. This process has been both rewarding and frustrating. Rewarding to connect with people I would never have met otherwise. Rewarding to see their material expressions of their connection to their heritage in the leaves they create. But frustrating to not yet find representatives of some cultural groups. Or even more frustrating to find them, but then have them drop away due to health, family, or other circumstances, and then to have to start again. This slide shows some of the leaves on the installation at Homer Watson House and Gallery in Kitchener, Ontario, on now. There are 108 cultural leaves hanging from the tree at Homer Watson, and more are coming in. I continue to reach out, and I am delighted that the tree continues to grow. And so I'm asking now, if you are Canadian and you don't see your cultural heritage represented, please get in touch. Back to Aurelia, This slide shows the tree installed at Aurelia Museum of Art and History in the summer of 2022. I started looking for funding to support the further development and continuation of the project. In 2022, I was awarded an artist-presenter collaboration grant along with Aurelia Museum of Art and History by the Ontario Arts Council. The grant would allow us to create a documentary video about the exhibition and offer enhanced programming. Now, I have lots of experience in organizational and administrative matters, but I have no specialized knowledge or experience of being a film producer. Without knowing the specifics, I could figure out general planning, scheduling, finance, consents, and contracts, but the creative side, no. How it all comes together, yikes. It was all more than a little daunting. Fortunately, Aurelia Museum curators Tanya Cunnington and Nanette Girotti at the left of this photo recommended two very talented videographers who agreed to work on this project, Tyler Grace and Chris Lewis. Tyler is working the camera on the right. I have to say that it was their expertise and advice that made the documentary such a success. The first thing most people creating videos tell you is that you need to have a storyboard. You're supposed to know what the film is going to look like before you make it. What are the scenes? How long will each scene be? What is the message? Then shoot, edit, review a rough cut, provide comments, and refine. This is a multi-stage process that will be cycled through a few times. Well, I knew that I wanted footage of the opening reception. I was pretty confident that unless there was another serious wave of COVID, we should have a good turnout. There would be interviews with a dozen or more leaf artists. I also hoped we would get footage of some of the programming events like workshops and kids programs, but due to timing and other factors, we weren't able to include these. Here, Chris is doing some walk-around shots during the opening in May 2022. Like many things, when making a video, you need to be adaptable and adjust to events. Some interviewees were comfortable doing a live interview. Others are located across the country, so interviews had to be done virtually. Some were interviewed by me online, while others preferred to record themselves based on our instructions. Here we are shooting one of the live interviews just before the opening in May 2022. Tyler was of the view that creating this film would be organic. We would see what we had from the opening and from the interviews and go from there. It's a very good thing he was comfortable with this approach, as he would be doing the editing. And good thing he and Chris were flexible when we needed to add in or redo certain segments. Oh, and then what about music? Fortunately, Canadian composer and musician Mark Wiley agreed to give us a license to use two of his instrumental pieces about trees. So with that, I'll let the documentary speak for itself, and I look forward to your questions after the video. Reflections of Ourselves celebrates the rich cultural heritage of Canadians. My name is Tracey Lawko, and I'm the lead artist and organizer of this fabulous exhibition. Reflections of Ourselves is an exploration of who are we? I think of it as a genealogical maple tree that presents cultural heritage through material culture. It is a reflection of our society in multidimensional ways. With a diameter of over 3 feet, 4 feet at its base, this tree is very old, probably more than 200 years, and it predates Confederation. Each of the bark segments has the names of the various sociolinguistic cultural groups that are present in Canada. It grows from deep Indigenous roots, starting at the base and growing up to when the initial settlers came and the more recent immigrant groups adding in. I hand-lettered each of the bark segments using a wax resist process similar to batik, and hand-dyed each of the bark segments with a bark-type texture. Each of the tree branches is made of copper wire and plastic tubing. My leaves are individually stitched in the range of colors found throughout the seasons. They represent the common threads and the mixing of our cultures. The cultural leaves are then arranged within this color palette. I provided the outline of the leaf shape to each leaf artist, but the choice of materials, techniques, design, and story was entirely up to them. And each, as you can see, each leaf is unique and tells its own individual story. They are done in a variety of techniques, which include embroidery, quilting, felting, weaving, batik, lace, crochet, beading, quill work, hair, sinew, and leather work, painting, drawing, origami, collage, marbling, photo transfer, and digital printing. Materials range from cotton, linen, silk, and canvas fabric, felt, wool, embroidery floss, silk, pearl cotton, metallic, and other threads. Wire, sequins, beads, shells, moose hide, deer hide, birch bark, sinew, sweetgrass, caribou hair, fish scales, seeds, paper, inks, paint, and ceramics. The artist statements are an important component of the exhibition. Each tells an individual story. Some have included their statement in their cultural language. They are organized around the exhibition space, alphabetically by cultural group, but it's also possible to look up each individual artist by name and find their cultural group.
My name is Fatuma Mulunji. I identify as a Swahilian from Uganda. I came to Canada in December of 1999. I thought about what would I use to identify myself as a Ugandan living in Canada. So I immediately thought of the crested crane. And my inspiration comes from the beauty of the crested crane and what it means to the Ugandan people. So the crested crane is the national bird of Uganda. So for the maple leaf, I chose two colors, green and red, which kind of symbolizes the Canadian weather. The crested crane, I did choose fine, thin, golden and sparkling thread for the crown on the head of the crested crane. And I used thick black thread for the legs and other parts of the body. But for the middle part of the body, I actually wanted to use real feathers.
My name is Catherine Rowland. I'm a mix, a fine mix of European, First Nations, and Hawaiian. It depicts, the leaf is very much like this. It has the two palm trees on it, which is to depict them leaving Hawaii and coming here to the Pacific Northwest. The tall ship sailing in to, it's a harbor view, the silhouette of Beaufort Harbor, where my family was raised. The sun and the clouds I put in there as their like navigational tricks for the Hawaiians. The Hawaiians were great navigators, and they used the sun and the stars and the clouds to navigate.
I just mentioned how are you doing? My name is Holacton, and I grew up with the name Rick Harry, but I go by my ancestral name. I am Coast Salish, Squamish, which how I would say Squamish Oath of the Squamish people, and Nam Geese from the people on Vancouver Island, top of Vancouver Island. This is the leftover of that piece. When I cut it out, I thought I'll just hang on to it and hung it up in the shop. When I did, I made a stem, and it was in cedar, so I wanted to bring the cedar into the piece. And these eyes here just represents that we are always being watched by our creator, our ancestors, our community, family, and ourselves. So in Salish design, that's to remind us that we're being watched. So we need to carry ourselves in a good way at all times.
My name is Vivian Liu. I'm Vietnamese. I came to Canada when I was 11 years old. In the front, I hand embroidered a depiction of the terraced rice fields, which are a magnificent symbol of my country's robust agriculture and majestic landscape. In the back, I glue actual rice grains harvested from Vietnam. I've arranged the rice grains pattern in a rain pattern to complete the circle of heaven and earth. I always loved the diversity that Canada embraces, and that is what attracted me to this project, is being able to be together in a large group that celebrates inclusivity. This project has inspired me to reflect upon the self, the society, and the synchronicity of both.
My name is Sonia Elliott. My mother arrived in Canada in the early 60s. She met my father in Acapulco and they decided to settle here. I knew I wanted to do the sugar skull, so I used applique just to start my design, and then I layered up fabric and batting and worked from there, doing a lot of hand embroidery. I did couching by machine, beadwork, because I'm also interested in beadwork. Every year on November 1st and 2nd in Mexico, and now starting in Canada too, we do have a celebration in Toronto. They celebrate Dia de los Muertos, or Day of the Dead. It is a day when it is thought that our ancestors are closest to visiting us on Earth, so they come for a visit.
My name is Nanette Girodi, and I'm the Executive Director of the Aurelia Museum of Art and History, and my cultural heritage is Hungarian. I was inspired by, of course, the iconic image of that red flower that is very reminiscent of the matyo pattern. And then I just started sketching and drawing. I looked at different types of flowers. I looked at some of my Hungarian books. Of course, I went online for some research just to try to find the flowers that I particularly liked, and then I just created my own design. So Tracey Lawko and I have worked together on a previous exhibition prior to COVID. And then Tracey had told me about this exhibition idea that she had, and I naturally thought it would be a great fit to have launch here at the Aurelia Museum of Art and History.
My name is Tracey Lawko, and my paternal grandparents came from the Ukraine. They came in the 1920s, and unfortunately, my grandparents died when I was very young. And my father worked hard to assimilate into Canadian culture, and so I have very little knowledge of my Ukrainian heritage through him. Growing up as a child and a teenager, my mother, who is not Ukrainian, had a Ukrainian friend, and that friend taught us how to make pisanki. And so that became the actual connection that I have to my Ukrainian heritage. We have here, the leaf is densely stitched with standard sewing thread, so that's just the background shape. And then I've used the same standard sewing thread to stitch the individual designs on the leaves. The background colors, the large color areas are done by machine, and then the detail is embroidered by hand.
And that's Running Coyote in English. And I'm from the Kainai First Nation, also known as Blood Indian Reserve number 148 in southern Alberta, and I'm a part of the Blackfoot Confederacy. For me, I always, like to always incorporate some of our artistic methodology. In this case, beading, and this is really basic beading. And even with the artwork, I like to use these methods that have been used for thousands of years to carry them on, and that's the beadwork that you've seen there. So, and it's just to represent, the connection that First Nations have to the environment, and how, we work together. We didn't try to overtake each other, or it was just we're a family. And then you see the symbols there. As long as the sun shines, the grass grows, and the rivers flow. Basically, the leaf embodies a lot of our storytelling, our history, our culture, but most importantly, our science and physics.
My name is Gabriela Rosende. I was born in Chile, which is in the most southwest point of the South American continent. My leaf design was inspired by the current knowledge that my bloodline has South American indigenous DNA. Rumors of having Mapuche ancestry were confirmed after my nephew took a DNA test out of curiosity. The materials I used were an embroidery needle, felt, deconstructed yarn, and just time. The choice of yarn was inspired by the llama, alpaca, and sheep wool used in traditional textiles, both in indigenous and European influenced fabrics. The deconstruction of the yarn was both a practical tool so that the yarn could readily fit through a needle, but it was also a representation, I guess, of my search into my own history and breaking down the barriers to my ancestry.
My name is Joseph Muscat. I was born on the island of Malta. Since the exhibition centers on a culture, I thought, wow, the Maltese people are known for their lace making. Lace is used in the priest's habits, in the altar cloth that is used, as well as special occasions like baptisms and weddings. Again, lace was very hard to miss. It was always very present and an indication of both the cultural heritage and an indication that something special was in process.
My name is Carmen Dennis. I'm from the Tahltan Nation. I chose moose tracks because that's like one of our biggest main sources of food, traditional wise. We use the hide for tanning, like everything in the moose usually gets used up. You see them a lot, like young boys, young girls, they learn how to hunt. We're out on the land all the time. The central design came from a knife sheath, so it was replicated. Colors are similar, not exactly the same. And then on the right side, there are crow tracks, which represent my clan. Moose hide is something of like being revived. Most of the younger generation is starting to get back into that, learning how to tan moose hide. Yeah, my coworker and I were teaching people how to work on moose hide again.
My name is Mila Borden, and my heritage is African Nova Scotian. For my leaf, I wanted to design something that reminded me of a place in my hometown, the Afrocentric Heritage Park. The park is the main gathering spot for hosting outdoor events in the Black community of New Glasgow. The technique I chose for my leaf was machine piecing, and I used some thread painting. The materials that I used to make my leaf, I used some cotton fabric and I used the Pan-African colors.
My name is Clara Lavinia and I'm a second generation Filipino-Canadian. My parents moved from the Philippines to Canada in the early 2000s, and my sister and I were both born here. My leaf is a multi-generational piece that was created in collaboration with my mom and my sister. And we work together to represent materials that are most unique to the Philippines, that best represent our art forms, our clothing, and our accessories. In the center of our maple leaf is a rose that is made out of piña fabric. And piña is a Filipino textile or cloth that's made using the fibers of pineapple leaves. I was interested in this project to be able to have a piece of my work exhibited in Ontario and to be able to represent my heritage in an exhibition that celebrates all the many cultures that are in Canada.
My name is Nada Binyamin and I am Assyrian. I came to Canada in 1993, so I've been here for more than half of my life. I wanted to do something that the modern Assyrian do, And it's also related to our ancient history as well. So I thought of, that's how I thought of Akitu, which is one of the most ancient festivals, where I used the fabric. I stitched it with hand stitching. And with the fill-in in the background, I did it all with embroidery, with hand making. In a way, we're all a little bit different, but then we're all humans. And these little things brings us together. And it's interesting, like for me, seeing this, like an idea of a tree that has a little bit of each culture that live in Canada, it's kind of saying that Canada is this beautiful tree.
I can't tell you how exciting it is to be here and to see all of you. This has just been quite a journey. It is my hope that by acknowledging the past and recognizing the past, that we will all be able to move forward in achieving truth and reconciliation. So where did the idea for Reflections of Ourselves come from? It was about 4 years ago, and I was hearing a lot of reports in the news about anti-immigrant sentiment, hate crimes, things like that, and I found it very troubling. You know, this isn't the Canada that I know, and it's not the Canada that I think I live in. And I wanted to do something about it. Trees are really important. They live in communities, they provide food, they provide shelter, and they provide the oxygen that we breathe. So then the idea came together. I thought, aha, I could create a tree. And what if I asked one person from each of all of the communities present in Canada to create a leaf honoring their heritage? There are 100 artists and 100 communities represented on this tree now, but there's room for more. So if you have friends or if you know people whose culture is not represented, please let me know. There's a guest book. Leave your name and contact information. The exhibition will travel, so there's time to add more leaves to the tree. So I hope you'll all take time to read through the statements and admire the leaves and get to know someone from a culture you didn't know before. So thank you all. I'm so thrilled to be here, and I couldn't be happier. Thank you. It is such fun to watch visitors to the exhibition come up to the tree and look at the different leaves, and then start to look for their own cultural heritage and identify that or those leaves, and then look for the cultural group in the tree bark. And then they start to read the artist statements and go all the way through the room. And it's wonderful to see this cultural exchange and cultural learning actually happening. There are many people to thank. Ninette Giarodi and Tanya Cunnington of the Aurelia Museum of Art and History for supporting this project from the concept stage. Cleo Skavinsky for engaging Indigenous participants. Peter Blakelock for photographing the leaves and installation. Jennifer Cogill for graphic design and compiling the artist statements. A generous private donor for funding the Leaf Artist Honorariums. Our talented videographers Tyler Grace and Chris Lewis. Music composed and performed by Mark Wiley. the Ontario Arts Council for an artist-presenter collaboration grant to create this documentary, the Blue Mountain Foundation for the Arts for the Robert G. Kemp Arts Award in recognition of this project, and of course, all of the wonderful leaf artists for creating a leaf in honor of their heritage.
Thank you so much, Tracey. I want to echo a lot of what everyone has been saying in the chat. Catherine said it well. She said, such a wonderful project, bringing together so many cultures in a welcoming and uplifting way.
Thank you so much. It's been a delight to do.
And here you can see where the exhibit is currently on view. And you can join Tracey for the reception on April 30th. And we do have a lot of questions in the Q&A. So let's get started here. Here's a couple about the construction. What material did you use for the bark? And how did you anchor the tree?
The bark is made out of cotton, but I used a wax resist process to hand letter all the names of the various cultural groups. I used color V pigments to then dye all of the segments, and then they are stitched and cut out, and then it was a process of assembling them to create the tree bark. The trunk is not anchored anywhere at the bottom. It hangs from the ceiling, and it actually collapses because it stands 8 feet tall, and with its size, I'd have to have a freight truck to transport it anywhere. So it actually, given that it's fabric, it actually is on a wire armature, and it collapses so that I can ship it to various venues.
So is it like hinged, or how does it collapse?
There are a series of hoops on the inside. So it's like an accordion almost.
Oh, so cool. This question says, could you please explain the meaning of Turtle Island?
Turtle Island is a term used by Indigenous peoples, as I understand it, to refer to North America.
Great, thank you. And there are a number of questions about the future of the exhibition. So someone would like to know if it will ever be displayed with the quilt of belonging. Do you have any plans to travel to other galleries or to exhibit in the United States?
Yes, the plan definitely is to travel. I am currently seeking venues across the country. And the venues range in size from quite formal, prestigious galleries to smaller regional galleries. The idea is that I would love to have it go somewhere close to most of the leaf artists who have participated in the project. So it started in Aurelia, and I'm very grateful to Tanya and Nanette for supporting the project at the Aurelia Museum of Art and History, and to Homer Watson, who is now hosting it. There is another gallery confirmed for next summer, also in Ontario, and a couple others under discussion. And as soon as the contracts are formalized, I'll be posting those and letting you know. But certainly if there's anyone out there who has a suggestion of someone I could contact at a gallery near you, please contact me. You can get a hold of me through my website at the contact page at traceylawko.com. And I look forward to hearing from you.
And we do have two specific suggestions. Janine says you should ask the Canadian Embassy in Washington, D.C. to display it. And in the chat, someone said, please consider the Shelburne Museum in Shelburne, Vermont, for some American venues.
Okay.
And Sid wants to know, what are the leaves behind you made of?
So those are the same as my stitched leaves that are on the tree. They are, well, let me pull one off for you here. So they are all stitched. All of my work I do using either by hand or using a long arm sewing machine. And I have a cotton fabric base, and then I start layering and layering different multicolors of thread until I get the shape that I want, and they curl up and they do all those wonderful things.
And let's see, Millie would like to know, is there a catalog of the show?
Not yet, but hopefully coming. I need to, I'm looking into getting funding for that. I'm also hoping to have more participants so that I can include the artist statements from all of the participants.
And so that answers this question, which is asking, is it a completed installation, or will there be an opportunity to add to the tree? And if you could let us know a few of the cultures that you would like to add and how people can get in touch with you if they are Canadian and would like to participate.
Well, I'll start with the last one and then remind me about the first question, because I I know the tree continues to grow, and it will continue to grow. The more people find out about it, the more the networking happens, the more interest I get, and able to collect the leaves. So the great thing about a tree is a tree grows. So that's the concept, and I just love seeing the new leaves come in as people get enthused about the project. In terms of ones that I'm still seeking, you can find that on my website. So there's 2 pages on the website, and that's www.traceylawko.com. And if you go to the top tab for reflections of ourselves, there's a main page that lists the current and past exhibitions, the general concept of the project, and all the currently participating leaf artists. There's also a link there to go to the call for participants, which lists what I expect of people participating and the cultures that I know I'm looking for. Now, if you're from a cultural group that you don't see on either list, still get in touch with me, because one of the interesting things is, time is passing and there are people coming from new parts of the world or different groups that are seeking refugee status and that sort of thing. So if you don't see your culture anywhere, please get in touch.
And it is limited only to Canadian citizens or permanent residents. Is that correct? That
is correct. Yeah. Yes, people contact me from, I live in Spain and I'd love to participate. And well, that would be lovely, but this is specifically about our Canadian heritage.
And one more question about this. They want to know, would you consider duplicate leaves from the same culture?
Not for the present time. I really want to see each of the cultures presented that we know of. It's been suggested that I need to grow a forest, and that's certainly a wonderful idea, and I'd love to do it at some point, but I'd like to get all the known cultures covered first.
Mm-hmm. And there's Fatiha is saying that they are doing a similar project and would like to get in touch. So please also go through Tracey's website. You'll find her contact information there. Please do get in touch. And a number of questions asking, will this documentary be posted on YouTube, and where can people find it and share it? So I can tell you all, yes, we record every single Textile Talk, including this one. We post them all on YouTube. They are available to the public, and you can find those at SAQA.com/textile talks. And you'll see a button there to click that says view previous recordings. So that'll give you, we're at almost 150 Textile Talks, and they are all publicly available on YouTube. So Leah would like to know, what advice would you have for getting a crowdsourced art project up and running?
Tenacity and patience. You need to be very focused. You need to know what you're looking for, and so that you have a scope for what you're doing. Otherwise, it's impossible. You need to be very focused. And there's lots of, what would I say, frustrations, missteps, communication. You find the more you do, oh, I wasn't clear enough in how I explained what I wanted for this, or what you need to do. So, you need to be reiterating, repeating an awful lot, and just keep reaching out in as many different ways that you know how, and through everyone and everything that you know. And social media nowadays makes that a lot easier than it used to be. I mean, I can imagine if I was, if it was 30 years ago and I was trying to write letters to all the guilds across Canada, and we've got photos, you can post them, people have a sense of what it is you're doing. So it's possible in a way now that it wasn't previously.
And I know this project got some grant funding. So how did that process work? And what are some of the challenges or advice you can share for people who are looking for grant funding for their art projects?
Again, persistence. I was successful with the One Ontario Arts Council grant to create the documentary, which I'm thrilled about. But I applied for many others and was not successful. It's a highly competitive process, and you win some, you lose some. And so you just keep trying and keep trying. And sometimes the ones you win might not be the one you expected. Sometimes you think, wow, this was perfect for that. Why didn't I get it? Well, other people are applying, and whoever the jury is who's evaluating the proposals might see more merit in another one than yours.
That's good advice. I'm wondering about some of the conversations that I'm imagining you must have had either with the leaf artists or at the events for the exhibition. Are there any that stuck out in your mind that you remember?
They're all so wonderful. Each leaf is so individual and tells its own story that it's very difficult to say, I like one better than another. I have to say, I have been thrilled with the Indigenous participation and the variety of techniques and materials that have been exhibited in those leaves in particular. One of them, the artist, hand smoked the moose hide. She carved the birch bark. She collected fish scales. She tufted caribou hair. I mean, it is just phenomenal, some of the techniques and materials that people have used. But I use that simply as an example because of the variety of techniques that were used. But they are all, each and every one of them, wonderful in their own way.
I love that. What has surprised you about this project?
Surprise. I don't know that I have an answer to that.
That's okay.
I mean, I guess the pleasant surprise that I've been able to reach out to people who don't know me through very anonymous means, putting things out on social media, sending, messages through Facebook and Instagram and stuff like that. And, I'm sure some people think this is spam or I'm crazy or whatever, but others have responded and been really, really keen. And I guess that's been the really, really pleasant surprise.
Yeah, that is really great. And I know as artists, we get a lot of unsolicited emails that are spam. So I imagine that is a challenge when you're sort of cold contacting people to convince them that you are real and the project is real. And yes, we really want your work. So there's a lot of comments in the chat with suggestions for venues for you. And we will save the chat and send it to Tracey afterwards so that she can read all of your great suggestions. So thank you all. And you can continue putting suggestions in the chat if you have any. I'm imagining this might be sort of like asking you if you have a favorite child, but do you have a favorite leaf?
No. And I'm simply not going to answer that because, as I say, they are so diverse, and the participants range in age from 16 to 90 something. Some are experts, professional artists. Others are extremely talented amateurs. Some are novices who, weren't sure they could do anything but wanted to try and had a story to tell. So each has their own merits, and I'm simply not willing to pick a favorite.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Lisa would like to know, what is the current total of leaves? You mentioned 100. Is that the accurate total?
Hanging at Homer Watson currently are 108. I know of a couple more that are coming in, and I'm hoping with this talk, there's going to be a whole bunch more.
Great. So those are all the questions that I am seeing. We're getting still lots of suggestions. So I think we can go ahead and wrap up. And I want to just say thank you so much, Tracey. I just love this project. It just feels really important to have such a coming together of different cultural groups at this moment. And I just think it's so beautiful and so well executed.
Well, thank you so much, Lucy. And I hope that many of you will come to see the exhibition if you're in the Toronto or Southern Ontario area. It will be there till pretty much the end of June. And if you're attending the SAQA conference, there will be the opportunity to come on the Sunday afternoon after the conference ends. So I look forward to seeing you and meeting some of you.
And future locations, I'm sure we will put them in our Fiber Art Friday e-newsletter. So if you want to make sure you don't miss any future reflections of ourselves venues, please subscribe to our Fiber Art Friday newsletter, and we will definitely share them there. I want to thank you all for coming. I want to thank you, Tracey, and our sponsors, of course, for supporting Textile Talks. We will be back again next week, same time, same place, for Miniature Costumes and Quilts, Gita Candlewall's Labor of Love, presented by the International Quilt Museum. As always, you can find all the details at SAQA.com/Textile Talks. And if you enjoy Textile Talks, we would love it if you would tell a friend, post about us on social media, or consider supporting us financially with a donation at SAQA.com/TT support. I will see you all next week. I hope you have a fantastic Wednesday. Thanks for watching.
Thanks for coming, everyone. Bye.